All right, welcome back, folks. This is the Jake Ellenbogen channel. I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and joining me is Alex Clancy, who is the host of Locked On Cardinals, and he has been a host in sports radio for a decade in Phoenix. He is going to be our expert of this brand new series. It's taken forever to do it, but we're going to learn a little bit more about each of these teams because hey, I know a lot about the Cardinals, but there's no way in hell that I know as much as Alex does. So, welcome to the show, Alex. Happy to have you on the channel, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to this, and really just right off the rip, I just want to get your thoughts on the Cardinals because, we talk about them a lot on the channel. Being a more Rams-centric channel, also now covering the Jets, I would be lying if I said we don't obviously bring up the Cardinals. And, there's a lot of, I think, casual folk out there that believe the NFC West is this powerhouse still. And I do not feel that way. And I'm curious where you are in regards to that because I'm not as high on Arizona, not even just from a fan standpoint. Just I wasn't a fan of what they did in the offseason. So I'm curious where you are on all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a glass cage of emotion. Let's just put it that way. This offseason. I mean, it's been from the end of the 2021 season that ended very unceremoniously. You saw a firsthand account of what happened on the other side, covering the Rams. There were some glaring needs the Cardinals had going into this offseason. 1, protect Kyler Murray. 2, hit other quarterback. 3, stop opposing wide receivers. And 4, stop opposing running backs from running roughshod all over this defense. The Cardinals didn't do anything to improve any of those things in a high-impact fashion. They were able to bring Rodney Hudson back out of retirement. That was probably the win of this offseason, not including Kyler Murray getting the contract extension. They haven't done anything to the cornerback room. They haven't done anything to the pass rush, and they haven't done anything to the interior of the defensive line in any sort of impact way. So what we've seen from Steve Keim is the now classic Steve Keim overcorrection offseason, where it was Steve Wilks, that didn't work, had to go get the polar opposite of Steve Wilks, Cliff Kingsbury, who didn't entertain NFL jobs because he didn't think he'd get hired anywhere, and then he went and got hired to be the OC at USC. Then he's like, wait, somebody wants me? Cool, I'm going to the NFL. The overcorrection of Josh Rosen / Sam Bradford / Mike Glennon to Kyler Murray, that was the easiest of them. And then what he's seen, and what I've said since Kyler Murray's been drafted, is the Arizona Cardinals defense has been the strength of this organization. And that's not what's supposed to happen if Cliff Kingsbury's head coach, because if the offense isn't the strength, what the hell is Cliff Kingsbury doing here? So what Steve Keim did this offseason in a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts is he overloaded everything on the offense to force the offense to be the strength of this team, which inherently put a scapegoat tag on Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator, if things don't work out in 2022. I don't understand why people don't see that. I'm getting vilified for saying that Vance Joseph will be the scapegoat, but look at the defense, and you tell me that's a defense can be top 15 in the NFL. I just don't see it. So the offseason's been a wide range of emotion for me.
Well, hey, I'm with you because, I look at what they've done and I'm not overly impressed. Obviously we talked about it a little bit off air. I do not like the Hollywood Brown move at all. I think it is a complete waste of a first round pick. Picks that are very important, in my opinion, to building a core roster. You talk about guys like Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins. Those are first-round picks. Those are guys that wouldn't be on the team if you just gave one of those first-round picks the year you got them away. So, those are quality players that make up building blocks for your organization. And then, of course, you look at Byron Murphy in the second round. You go out and get Budda Baker as well in the second round in 2017. I like what they did getting these guys through the draft, but they've kind of allocated some funds to older guys like J.J. Watt, who's been injury prone in my opinion, and A.J. Green, who, I guess I totally understood why you would go after him in hopes of, hey, look, the guy, yes, he had a hard time staying healthy towards the end of his tenure with Cincinnati, but, anyone could argue that, look, like now he gets an opportunity here. And maybe, he's away from Andy Dalton. Now he's got Kyler Murray. Maybe he can do something. he's kind of just a guy at this point in his career. I mean, he can have a game or two here and there, but at the end of the day, he's just a guy. Then you have Rondale Moore, who, I mean, I think he should have been a first-round talent, and you barely used him last year. So we'll see what ends up happening this year, but I think there are definitely pieces here for the Cardinals, but I tend to agree with you that I think there are definitely going to be scapegoats, and obviously Vance Joseph could be one of them. But I agree with you in the fact that I don't like who's scared of Dennis Gardeck, for instance. Like who's scared of him?
He's got sweet sack dance, though. I'll tell you that much. He's got one of the better. He's got that Conan the Barbarian mane. I mean, there are things that Dennis Gardeck brings to the table. Very philanthropic here, charitable in Phoenix also. But listen, to sugarcoat what I said initially, they have all the offensive weapons in the NFL.
Absolutely.
So if this works, it's gonna flip and work. Like they could, and this is people forget because it's easy to forget. They were one of the better offenses through 12 weeks of last year, and that's a truthful statement. Okay, so as much vitriol that's come out of my mouth and others that they put up 11 points or 12 points against the Lions, they put up less than 2 touchdowns against Indy at home when their whole defense was hurt on Christmas. Like this offense and Kyler Murray at their peak in a vacuum are absolutely special. And it's just we're gonna find out really in the first 3 weeks what Hollywood Brown is as a wide receiver one. At home against Kansas City when they're gonna need to put up a 30-burger to win. On the road in Vegas with that improved defense. And then the Rams come to town week 3 with blood salivating from all of their glands to show everybody why they're Super Bowl champions. Bobby Wagner was one of the more underrated signings in the offseason, and they went out and got Allen Robinson. Like I said on the podcast today, the Rams had an offseason like they missed the playoffs, and the Cardinals had an offseason like they won the Super Bowl. And it's like that's the distinction with the arms race between in the NFC West from the front runners to Seattle is vast. Like the Rams every year add the hot piece that the team your favorite team wants. You want your favorite team to add, and the Rams have done that. And the Cardinals' big one was Hollywood Brown, and we'll see. But AJ Green was a safety net for Kyler Murray. The Zach Ertz trade last year was a big trade. Like Steve Keim has done positive things, but the problem is now you've paid Kyler Murray. You can't just trade draft picks anymore because you can't afford to acquire the players that you're going to be trading the draft picks for.
Yeah, this is the difference between a guy like Les Snead and Steve Keim.
Well, Les Snead was almost out of a job, right? I mean, let's be honest. Yeah. Les Snead was almost out of a job, and then something happened. Marcus Peters happened. Was that the first one?
Well, I think he got some. Well, here's what happened: is that Les Snead had Jeff Fisher.
Oh yeah, I guess.
And then when they were like, Les, it's okay. We know it wasn't you, it was Jeff. We do not know, Alex. I will say this, and people might hate on me for it. And I'm a Les Snead fan, but we do not know if it was Jeff Fisher or Les Snead or both. He got kind of a free pass on that because McVay's like, I want to work with this guy, I believe in this guy, and they worked well together. But we don't know if that was more Les Snead or Jeff Fisher. I heard some things that maybe Les Snead wanted Carson Wentz and Jeff Fisher wanted Goff, or vice versa. Like it's all he said, she said. We don't actually know, and I think that's kind of the fun thing about it. But Steve Keim has been all over the place, man. I mean, not even just talking about football. I mean, he's been all over the place, out of the front office. So this guy has been kind of out there, but. Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of his roster composition, if I'm being honest. I don't mind going out and getting stars, as you know. I mean, with what the Rams have done, I don't mind it. But I felt like it was kind of just, for every J.J. Watt you get, maybe you could have gone out and gotten a Trey Hendrickson, who might have fit the team better, and it might have given you some youthful exuberance type deal. Instead, you go out and get J.J. Watt, a guy who just can't stay healthy at this point in his career. That hurts. And then, as much as I will applaud them for at least trying to make the AJ Green thing work, because I can't hate on anybody for seeing what he has left in the tank. And obviously they have all the weapons of the world, but it's like you spent a second round on Andy Isabella, a fourth round pick on a guy that's not even on the roster anymore. A Butler, Hakeem Butler. So, it is kind of, it's head scratching, if you will. But I do like what they're doing with the offensive line. And I think the key here is you want to be able to protect Kyler Murray. You got, from left to right, you got Humphreys, you got Pugh. I mean, Pugh's all right. He's not what we thought he'd be coming out of college, but he's all right. You got him. You got Rodney Hudson, Will Hernandez. Will Hernandez, this is them saying the Giants' offensive line sucked. Clearly, the coaches weren't developing, so maybe he will develop with us. Because Will Hernandez, you remember him coming out of UTEP, this guy was incredible. Like, we thought he was going to be, like, a star. So you got Will Hernandez, and I'm a big fan of what Kelvin Beacham's done as a kind of a plug-and-play guy. So, I like their offensive line. Something that's not talked about, they also got Cody Ford, who I also like, as depth, and they also drafted Josh Jones in the third round of 2020. Whether or not they ever need him is to be determined. But they have a lot of depth. They probably have more depth than most teams in the league. Yeah. So that's a good place to start, because if you're looking at this team, and again, I told you I'm not as high on them in the this year, but I do have to say their offensive line is above and beyond where most teams are. And when you have a quarterback that has been prone to kind of faltering down the stretch, I don't buy the Call of Duty talk. I don't know if you've probably heard of it. I don't buy any of that. I think this guy does, with his body structure, I hate to break it to you, but as a 5'8", 175 pounder myself, like if I were getting hit by a bunch of guys, I'd probably not last the full season either. But I think because of his body structure, he doesn't last the full season. I think the best thing you can do is take advantage of having an offensive line. And I think that's what the Cardinals have done. They have at least added pieces where you have to feel good about. If the development's there, they have it, and then they have the depth. But where are you on the offensive line? Am I too high on them? Am I too low on them?
No, it's good. I mean, that's a pretty good prognosis. 2018 was an abysmal season for so many different reasons. They scored, just for your friends, tell your friends, if you want a little bar talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals scored 14.1 points per game in 2018, which was less points per game than the 2008 Detroit Lions, who went 0-16. Before the pivot to offense first, before the full pivot. So the Cardinals offense was absolutely putrid. I remember being there week one. The Washington professional football team came to town. It was Alex Smith's first game to Washington, Adrian Peterson's first game as a Washington professional football team member. And the Cardinals were on the field for 5 minutes in the first half. That's how the season started. So coming from then and, building the offensive line slowly but surely, DJ Humphries is one of the better picks that Steve Keim has made. I think it was mid-20s where they got DJ Humphries, or maybe it was the teens, I can't remember. Kelvin Beacham is one of the better signings that Steve Keim has made, because he did the Andre Smith thing from Cincinnati, gave him a lot of money. That didn't work. Gave Justin Pugh money. Justin Pugh took a pay cut to stay. Kelvin Beacham has never made more than $2 million, I don't think, as an Arizona Cardinal, and he's been a bookend of DJ Humphries since, and then trading for Rodney Hudson makes all of this work, because without Rodney Hudson, this doesn't work. Kyler Murray, I've said this when Kyler got drafted, and I'll still say it now, even though they have Rodney Hudson, the best offensive lineman the Arizona Cardinals have is Kyler Murray's legs. That's going to be the get-out-of-jail-free card. And you want to use it less and less. Like what I've been saying this offseason is, you want him to learn the Drew Brees step up in the pocket move now. Doesn't have to be Peyton Manning. He's not 6'5". Drew Brees and Kyler Murray, by all accounts, are pretty much the same height. Drew Brees may have an inch on him. Kyler Murray has a cannon. He's got an absolute cannon. Okay, yeah. And his ability to throw the ball down the field with accuracy is something that, not everybody can just be Patrick Mahomes, who has Tyreek Hill, who's faster than everybody else, just go and get it. Kyler Murray needs to learn how to step up, plant, and gun it down the field like he hasn't been able to as well as we'd expected through 3 years. But with the offensive line, plus his ability to be elusive, I think he's got to learn it different than the Steve Young, Tony Romo spin out, because Aaron Donald, like many others, have already learned that. So he's got to learn something else. And what better than to step up in the pocket and just hammer it down the field? But yeah, the offensive line's fine, because without Kyler Murray, none of this works. And I just wish they would have drafted a first-round pick. Tyler Linderbaum was there out of Iowa at 23. He was there. Well, he plays center, he plays guard. Play him somewhere else. Get him, play him at guard.
He could have
play
played
him at guard.
Pugh.
Yeah, play him at guard until Rodney Hudson wants to retire. So yes, right now in 2022, fantastic. Steve Keim is going through 1-year relationships trying to find a marriage. And this year, we'll see, because I think there's only one player under contract after 2022 as an offensive lineman, and it's DJ Humphries.
They got and they also got 2 guys in the draft, Marquise Hayes and then my guy Lucida Smith, who is very underrated.
But these are flyers, man. Like, yes, underrated, but what does a 6th-round pick underrated mean? A 5th rounder? A 4th rounder?
Oh, that's true.
Like, but I understand what you're saying, but it's like, listen, these guys perform in college, and for some reason or another, they drop in the draft. And then Steve Keim drafts somebody in the 6th round instead of taking a bona fide perennial Pro Bowler in the 1st or 2nd round. And that's the distinction between the two, where it's like you hope something works out instead of barring injury or anything crazy happening, that this is going to work. Like Tristan Wirfs in the 1st round in 2020, he took Isaiah Simmons. In 2021, he took Zaven Collins instead of another offensive lineman or corner where they were bound to fall.
And honestly, you bring up the Linderbaum thing. That was one of my most confusing things about the Marquise Brown trade. Because it's like you said, you could have ended up with him. You could have gotten a bevy of players. Mm-hmm. Now that Marquise Brown is a Cardinal, though, what can we expect? Because I watched this guy all last year, and I could not help but think of drops. Like, this guy, there was a reason why Justin Tucker needed a career-long, a record-breaking 66-yard field goal to win the game. They shouldn't have been in that position. If you saw that game, which I'm sure you probably did, Marquise Brown dropped like 2 touchdowns. So, like, what is this guy a 1,000-yard receiver? Is he going to be around the 800s? And is he going to, where are you on him?
So, I got a theory. And here's the thing. And it equates to basketball, too. When players are always wide receiver 1, or always the best player on their team coming out of high school, going into college, and then going into the NFL, especially NBA players, not everybody's Lou Williams or Jamal Crawford who yearns to come off the bench. Some guys need their reps early. They want to sweat during warm-ups, rip off the pants, and go play basketball instead of sitting and waiting to come in until 3 minutes left in the 1st quarter. It's not for everybody, especially if you've been a starter your whole life. Marquise Brown was like the 3rd option on offense. He was wide receiver 1, Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson running the ball, and then Marquise Brown. Even though, like, he's wide receiver 1, he got his targets. I think he got, 6 or 7 a game. That's fine, but he needs reps early and often. He's like a Randy Moss when he takes a playoff. It's like, I'm not saying he was, but it's like he needs to keep his sweat up. He needs to be looked for a lot, and I feel like the mental mistakes will just subside. I still remember him in Miami, week 1. They put up a 50-plus burger on Miami, and that's when all the players were calling their agents saying, "Get me the hell out of here." Like, he has that in him. And I feel like people are holding too much weight into the fact that he and Kyler played 5 years ago together. Like, sweet. That's badass. And I would much rather trust Lincoln Riley than Cliff Kingsbury calling the offense for the Cardinals. Like, we're in a different situation here. And I think the floor, you'd hope, is 1,000. That's 60-plus yards a game. Like, what are we looking at here? Like, I feel like 1,000... Yeah. I feel like 1,000-yard receiver is super overblown. Like, it's there. You'll hit your numbers. You'll hit your mark. It'll make you a Pro Bowler, things like that. But I'm much more looking at the floor than the ceiling for Hollywood Brown. Like, if he doesn't have 900 yards receiving and 8 or 10 touchdowns, we're going to have a very uncomfortable conversation come off season, because remember, his agent, A.J. Brown's agent, Deebo Samuel's agent, DK Metcalf's agent, he will not play on that 5th-year option. I can almost guarantee that. So they traded for a guy that's going to play 1 year and want a contract. And he's not in the level yet, because he hasn't been given the opportunity to be on the level of A.J. Brown or DK Metcalf. But if he has like 700 yards receiving, misses 3 games, and like 5 touchdowns, it's going to be a weird conversation. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he'll get 7 or 8 targets a game. I think he's going to be a great wide receiver 1A to DeAndre Hopkins. They're perfect, thunder and lightning kind of thing. I just hope he doesn't become just a deep ball threat like Christian Kirk was. Because that, I think, would be a huge misstep, and that's going to be more on Cliff Kingsbury than anybody else.
Now, you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins and, obviously
Love
the
him.
whole suspension thing.
I don't care. I believe him.
So here's the thing. He's going to be suspended for what, 6-7 games?
6 games.
6 games. Is that enough to take the Cardinals out of playoff contention?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
I didn't think so.
Yeah.
I have them missing the playoffs, but I don't have them missing the playoffs because of that.
Yeah. No. And the reason why is, we're going to find out a lot week 1 through week 3. Kansas City at home, Raiders on the road, Rams at home for the Cardinals.
That is absolutely
we're going to find out real quick. But then there's as close to a honeypot sector of the schedule. The Cardinals have 6 games. They have the Eagles at home. They have the Saints at home. We're going to find out a lot more about both of those teams as the season progresses. But then they have Seattle twice in 4 weeks. They've got a backup of games they can win to where it's not like they're going to start 0-3 and the season's lost. You hope they don't start 0-3 in those games with DeAndre Hopkins out. But
yeah,
I think they have enough firepower with James Conner, even though he's not going to hit the numbers. You hope he doesn't hit the numbers like he did last year, which means there's going to be production from another part of the running back room. They've got enough. Without DeAndre Hopkins and this offensive skill set position and offensive line, they'd still be 18th best in the NFL. You can't diminish what the offense looks like now without DeAndre Hopkins just to make it a crutch for why you're going to lose games in the first 6 weeks of the season. I just don't. I think they have enough firepower to at least stay afloat. If they go 3-3 or 4-2 to start, there's a whole 2 seasons left in 2022. It's broken up like crazy. So, no, I don't think that's going to be a main catalyst for them missing the playoffs if they do. No.
No, I don't either. And I think when you look at the Cardinals, I think they have enough to definitely win 8 to 10 games. The question is, will 10 do it? And I don't know. I think I'm looking at them around the 9 win, 9 and 8. I think Seattle is going to be better than people are saying, which is kind of weird because typically this is a league full of quarterbacks, right? If you have a quarterback, you can win a Super Bowl. If you don't, you can't. But I feel like Seattle has the whole we're going to run the football thing down, whereas I feel like they've been building their offensive line, which it sounds bizarre to say because Russell Wilson never had that. But, building the offensive line, the defense looks better. So I think, I don't think this, conference or rather this division is going to be that bad. I don't see 3 teams like everyone else does. And, I think I look at this defense and I think they definitely have pieces, but, I'm more worried with the Cardinals. If I'm a fan, I'm worried about the long term because we've already seen, consistency is everything. And unfortunately, the Cardinals are really consistent in one area that you don't want to be. At the end of the season, we already know Cliff Kingsbury, regardless if it's college or the NFL, has not succeeded. He is not. His teams fall apart at the end. Kyler Murray, he doesn't succeed at the end of the season. Whether it's he can't withstand the pressure or if it's a durability thing, it's there. It's pretty obvious. So, what can they do to combat that? How can they get over this hump? Because right now, it's not just me saying this. You're nodding in agreement. There are other people that say this. I know people are still using the whole Call of Duty thing, which I find hilarious. There's no way that has any merit. But anyway, people are saying this. And you have to know Cliff Kingsbury's hearing this. So in what way can they do to finally get over this hump? Because Kyler Murray, let's call it like it is, the first game of the year against the Rams, he looked like the MVP of the league. He looked like unbelievable. I mean, he looked like the best quarterback in football against the Rams. Was it week 4? I mean, after winning,
week four,
winning 3 straight games, making Tom Brady's Buccaneers look like nothing.
Yeah.
And then staying at home, be like, we're at home. We're going up against Cardinals, 10-0 against them under Sean McVay or whatever they were.
Yeah.
and they lose. And honestly, they were dominated in all phases. So, how do you go from that to then, like, that's what I'm, curious about with because if the Cardinals can figure out how to not fall off a cliff at the end of the season, they can be as good as any team in the league.
Yeah, it's true. There's a couple things, so thank you for that. Number one, I've said this, I'll continue to say this, and I truly believe what I'm about to say. Kyler Murray, so my favorite thing to say, when Jared Goff was still the quarterback of the Rams, I still use it. Jared Goff will win because of Sean McVay. Kyler Murray will win in spite of Cliff Kingsbury. And I truly believe that is a factual statement still to this day. Has Cliff been the head coach where the Cardinals have gone from 5 to 8 to 11 wins? Yes. He has signed a paycheck or he has been given a paycheck as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. He can't find the defensive room, so he's the head coach of the offense. Van Joseph is the head coach of the defense, okay? Is Kyler Murray partially at fault for the downfalls? Obviously, 1,000%, okay? The defense faltered down the stretch as well, which when you take the strength of the team, which has been the defense, don't let people fool you. The defense has been the strength of this team. The more stable, productive, second one to the last second of every game, they have been the strength. Week 1 against Tennessee, they put up a 40-burger, 5 sacks, 2 strip sacks from Chandler Jones, 2 short fields, easy points, okay? Like Cleveland, the win on the road when Cliff Kingsbury was out. The defense carried them there. Like, the defense was the reason why they had such a good road record last year. Cliff Kingsbury can put together... Have you watched Entourage? Okay, well, Cliff Kingsbury can put together a great movie trailer, but the movie usually isn't very good. And that's, like, he has shown masterclass in play calling. Masterclass. Like, he has shown things I'm like, only an evil genius would be able to do that to opposing defenses. He'll do that once or twice a game, and then you look, and they have 1 timeout left with 2 minutes left in the third quarter in a 3-point game, and we're like, what's going on here? False starts, they're towards the top of penalties every year. People say it's the players. I say it's the coach. It's the functionality of the organization. Ask the Raiders. How many players have they had over the last 30 years? It's always been the Raiders atop the penalty list. It just is. It's death, taxes, Las Vegas/Oakland Raiders penalties. And those are things, I know I'm going all over the place here, but the point is, down the stretch, the simple things are not being done. Penalties, timeouts, correct play calling on 3rd and 8, things like that where they have the ball with 1:35 left. The opposing team has 2 timeouts or 3 timeouts, and all the Cardinals need to do is get 2 first downs to win. That first drive is a 28-second drive, then a punt. That's what the Cardinals have done and continue to do under Cliff Kingsbury. Kyler Murray needs to get better. Absolutely. But let me tell you, and let me remind people, I implore people, you can't compare quarterback to quarterback when it comes to a specific team. Kyler Murray is growing in the natural progression of a young quarterback. That's why I call it a rookie scale contract. Just because Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes ruined it for everybody doesn't mean that this isn't natural. People want it now so badly. And it's like, you know what? That's not how it works. It's not how it works. It just isn't. And it is. I mean, Justin Herbert, screw those guys. It's so much easier for them, but no, I mean, it took Patrick Mahomes his second full season to actually win a Super Bowl, which, I guess is kind of a way to validate Kyler Murray. Down the stretch, Cliff Kingsbury needs to be elite. And he has not been a good head coach, in my opinion. I don't think he should have got the contract extension. I don't think Steve Cobb should have got the contract extension. But this is where we are. And I'm sorry, I'm going on a diatribe here. This is, I finally found it. I call my dad, I'm like, I found it. When people ask what the Arizona Cardinals are like, the Arizona Cardinals run their organization like they've won 10 Super Bowls. We got it. We know what we're doing here. Let us do it. Look at the rings. I don't know if it's bravado. I don't know if it's trying to make the most money possible. They're 30th ranked in value in the NFL. I don't know what it is, I feel bad for the fans, but what I think that the most frustrating part is there's room to pivot. There's room where it's like, if these two things happen, the trajectory of this organization can completely shift. And I think the first one is they paid Kyler Murray. The second one is Steve Keim has to draft better. And that's like, just better. Just don't be the worst. And this team can this isn't, like, I fanboy over Matt Prater. I fanboy over, like, guys just do their job well. Buda Baker, I fanboy over. Not, like, AJ Green. I grew up with AJ Green. The fact that he's an Arizona Cardinal is awesome. But covering the team, it's like, or, having a podcast surrounding the team, it's more like, how does nobody see what's wrong here? How does nobody see it, and why am I getting unfollows on Twitter because I say what's right in front of everybody's faces, and people just refuse to see it? So, I don't know. Like, dude, if you told me they win 12 games this year, be like, okay, that means the offense put up a 30-burger game and Cliff Kingsbury finally caught up to Kyler Murray's growth. If they win 7, I'll be like, well, this is definition of insanity. Hashtag DOI. You'll see it all over my Twitter.
Yeah, and I think, obviously, I agree with really everything you said. There's nothing I can disagree with. And I think with Kingsbury is that, it's okay, man. You're an OC. That's really what we've come to the realization of, is that if he doesn't get it done this year, there's no more years if you're a good organization. Now, what you're saying is that they're probably going, since they're acting like they won 10 Super Bowls, they're probably going to sign him to another deal. No, I'm kidding. But, at this rate, it's honestly staring us in the face right now. This is a tried and true example of a head coach being given too much responsibility and having a lot of talent, and really at the end of the day just being an offensive coordinator. And there are a lot of guys like that, and I feel like initially when Sean McVay was hired by the Rams, I myself did not think that. This is the guy I wanted. I did not want Cowher coming out of retirement or Gruden. Mm-hmm. I didn't want Shanahan. There's a tweet of me saying, don't wait for Shanahan, just hire McVay. I think a lot of people felt like Sean McVay was going to be, just that guy that, was the offensive coordinator. And sure enough, he proved that he wasn't. You look at just the discipline and just how, he had his moments. He has growing pains where you're like, all right, this guy's really an offensive coordinator that is winning games. And he got Wade Phillips, but he's really he's going to have to develop. And he did. Eventually, the timeouts stopped being no timeouts in the fourth quarter. That wasn't a thing anymore. Now, he was really good with timeouts this past year. You see the development, and it just kind of goes to show you, not everybody is, offensive coordinator career-wise. These guys can make that move. Mm-hmm. But Kingsbury might be. I think we're seeing signs that he really is. And I understand, on one hand, the uber, and I'm sure you deal with them, so you know what I'm talking about. The uber optimistic Cardinal fan is not looking at Cliff Kingsbury in a realist form. He's looking at, or he or she is looking at Cliff Kingsbury in a what I want him to be, or what I think he is, but I'm more
what
delusional
he's done
for him.
From 5 to 8 to 11.
Yeah, and
with the wins.
I think just the case in that sense is that you have to understand something. He made the playoffs last year, and you can give him credit, but you can't give him too much credit because that team should have 100% made the playoffs. That team was good enough to maybe win a Super Bowl if things went the right way. I know I'm just I'm just telling you, but it's true. They have all the talent in the world. I just think it gets to that point where it's like you have to start reevaluating. You're like, well, is Kingsbury our guy? And I think this is the year they'll decide. If you guys go to the divisional round, of the playoffs or whatever, I'd say that's a win. It's level up from last year. I would take that. I'd say, okay, Kingsbury is somewhat on the right track because I don't think this team is as good as it was last year, in my opinion. But if this team doesn't make the playoffs like I believe, I don't see how you even keep Kingsbury because I feel like that's just proving that Kingsbury isn't going to take this team that has the talent to the next level.
Let me ask you this. So he got a 5-year contract extension in the offseason. Steve Keim got a 5-year contract extension in the offseason. And I still agree with you. Like, that's the thing where it's like, I said a lot of expletives when I found out that those 2 contract extensions happened. I said a lot of them. Yeah. Mr. 7 and 9 himself. Yeah, it was perplexing. So here's the thing, is everything I agree. Like, Cliff Kingsbury's never won an important NFL game. And we're still dealing with that. He's a player's coach. Players love him. Problem is, players' coaches don't win. Sean McVay's a weird one. Like, he's a player's coach, but he'll eat your GD lunch. Like, that's not something. This isn't fruit baskets and cell phone breaks like Cliff Kingsbury's trying to pull in Phoenix. Like, Cliff Kingsbury has shown that he can do some things very well, but when they need things to be done very well by a head coach, he's absent. And it's not like a dump just on Cliff Kingsbury. It's Steve Keim hasn't been able to build out a full roster for his employees to withstand the rigors of an NFL season. Just because DeAndre Hopkins goes down doesn't mean they should go 1-5 to end the season. Okay? Just because DeAndre Hopkins goes down doesn't mean they didn't even clinch a playoff spot on their own last year. Sean McVay and the Rams had to do it for them. So, the fact that they probably still would have clinched a playoff spot, they couldn't do it when they had a 3-game lead with like 5 games to play in the division. These things aren't exceptions to the rule. The first half of the season was the exception to the rule. And I think that they're closer towards the first half of last season where they started 10-2 to the latter. It's like once things start rolling downhill, even though there's no momentum, quote unquote, in the NFL, there's momentum in the NFL with a rain cloud that can just cast shade over an organization. It's like, Murphy's Law just comes into play. It's like anything that can go wrong will go wrong. But it was an embarrassment in the playoff game, an absolute embarrassment. They weren't the better team on the field, but they lost to John Wolford in Week 17 of 2020, so you can kind of see it coming. Even though Kyler Murray got hurt in that game and was out for the majority of it. Like, all in all, I don't know what the hell's going on. So, like, that's the thing. It's like, and I think that that's a rational way to look at it. It's not, you can't predict what's going to happen. The Cardinals could put up 30 points a game and go 9-8 next year. We have no idea what this team's going to look like. But there is one thing that we do know without a shadow of a doubt. The Band-Aid will be ripped off. Everybody's going to be exposed, for better or worse, this season. Is Steve Keim a good GM? Can Cliff Kingsbury coach? Will Kyler Murray become elite? Is this defense going to be a bottom 10? Is Hollywood Brown a wide receiver 1? We're going to find out everything. And the icing on the cake is Hard Knocks in season is going to be there down the stretch. And it's like, there's nowhere to hide. Either the Cardinals are going to make the pivot and become a playoff team that could be a fringe perennial playoff team with Kyler Murray calling the plays, or, Kyler Murray snapping the ball, getting the ball snapped to him. It's been a long day. Or it's going to be the laughingstock Cardinals that we saw during the second half of the last 2 seasons when there was so much hope coming out of State Farm Stadium in Phoenix to start both of those seasons. One or the other is going to happen, and it will not be anywhere in the middle. And I hope that they can. I want Cliff Kingsbury to prove me wrong. And if you were to be covering the Cardinals, you'd be sitting in my same exact spot. You're like, you know what? I would much rather be wrong than be right about Cliff Kingsbury. But there is no conventional wisdom or proof to show that anything's going to change. And that's the thing that's super frustrating about all of this. I hope it does. There's no proof to show in the history of time as him as a head coach that it will.
It's so bizarre because you sound like me with Jeff Fisher. And, like, that team wasn't even making the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, it goes to show you, though, when you start opening up that pocketbook and you're dishing out dollar signs left and right to these guys, the aspect of everything changes. I mean, when Jeff Fisher was like, hey, we're going to get Jared Cook and we're going to get Drew Bennett and we're going to get this guy, and you're like, wait, why is everyone coming from Tennessee? But anyway, we're going to get all these guys. We're going to get Jake Long. I mean, Rams Twitter back in the day, and this was like, what, I don't know, 2010 or whatever. Like, Twitter had barely been alive. But I remember Rams Twitter was, like, losing their mind. Hashtag waiting up for Jake. Because they were freaking out about the idea Jake Long, this Pro Bowl tackle, was going to sign with the St. Louis Rams. And he actually did. And he ended up getting Sam Bradford's ACL torn in preseason. It's a third-string pass rusher. But the point is that they did dish out money. They paid Kenny Britt. They paid the corpse of Cortland Finnegan. Not even the real Cortland Finnegan. Like, this is what I'm talking. So, like, I know what you mean, because I remember when they started paying these guys, everyone's like, wait a minute. Oh, like, that could be interesting. And then it's like nothing ever happened. And I was like you. It's like no matter what, I was always called negative, when in reality, I'm one of the most positive Rams fans out there. Like, I was one of those people that believed, like, the year Sam Bradford tore his ACL, the first year in 2013, he was second in all passing statistics behind Peyton Manning, who broke, like, every record.
Yeah.
They were 3-5, and I still felt like they were probably going to make the playoffs because I felt like they were finally getting it together and the offense was moving. And then Mike Mitchell tore his ACL and all that changed. To that point, I was like, yes, it's going to happen. Like, I'm confident in it. It's going to happen. And fans are telling me no, but then I'm the negative one because I keep saying, like, when Sam Bradford went down and they got Nick Foles later on, it was like the next year. I was like, man, nothing's going to happen. Okay, Jeff Fisher plays one style of football. It's Fisher ball. It's running this 80s offense. We're going to punch them in the mouth. We're going to play defense, and that's it. And we're going to have an offensive coordinator that has no experience being an offensive coordinator. That was Fisher ball. So I know what you're saying. It's not that they're the same, because obviously I think Cliff Kingsbury knows a lot more about the offense than Jeff Fisher. Mm-hmm. But it's this idea where you see the warning signs. You're like, hey, before you dive into that body of water, I want you to know that there's a shark in there. And they're like, no, this is fun. There's the thrill of it, right? Like, oh, Jeff Fisher's a former Super Bowl coach. Oh, Cliff Kingsbury. It's Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, the dude has the coolest hair known to man. Like, people get involved in that. And so they dive in, and then the shark eats them whole. And you're like, I told you. I mean, I hate to be that guy. Like, you're dead now. But, like, I told you not to jump into the body of water that had a freaking shark in it. It's kind of the same thing here. It's like I told you ahead of time, like, hey, this Cliff Kingsbury thing, as much as I wanted it to work, and I really wanted to be wrong, I'm kind of right about this. It's not working out.
Yeah, I mean, all it took me was the first drive on offense. I think it was the first drive in 2021 at Tennessee, where Chandler Jones, strip sack, fumble recovery. I can't remember exactly where it was. It was deep in Tennessee's territory. I think it was inside the 40. Or it might have even been inside the 30. And then they drive down, they get down to like the 9, and then it goes timeout, false start, incomplete, field goal. And I'm like, nothing's changed, baby. That's exactly what we saw going into 2020. And like, what do you mean they won by 40? Like, yes, they did. On the hands of the defense, something that Cliff Kingsbury doesn't touch. So, if you want to give, like, look at where the points are coming from and where the Cardinals started on those drives where they scored touchdowns. Isaiah Simmons stopped Derrick Henry dead in his tracks on the goal line. Okay? That was the defense. That was, like, it was timeout, false start, incomplete, field goal. And I'm like, that's a wrap, baby. And then Cliff Kingsbury, when things really started to hum, when there's really no pressure, you start 3-0, 4-0 as the Cardinals, after you beat the Rams at SoFi, I'm like, whatever. Then you're humming. Then it's the beginning of any sort of sports movie where it's like, showtime, whatever, trick plays, everything's working. And then A.J. Green doesn't turn around on Thursday Night Football, and things shift. It's like, yeah, there's turmoil through an 18-week, 17-game season. And the ability to adapt is something that Cliff Kingsbury hasn't been able to do much of either, where it's like he had a great game plan going into 2021, what he wanted this offense to look like. Funny, though, if it's just you and me talking, the scripted plays to begin the games are the ones that don't really work that well, which doesn't really lend for you to think that he has a really good grasp of opposing teams' defenses, or maybe he needs an offensive coordinator so he can be the damn head coach. Like, if Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach and he had an offensive coordinator calling the plays, this would be a lot more palatable because you'd have another offensive mind, and, you know, it's just, these are the things where it's like, he has some of the best play calls inside the 10-yard line that I've ever seen. Kyler Murray, there's no reason why Kyler Murray should ever be river dancing to the far pylon all by himself. But Cliff Kingsbury finds ways to make it happen. 2 or 3 times a year, it's like, genius, naked boot time, genius. And then, you know what, I mean...
the whole face bomb, oh my God.
I mean, I just need, like, there's so many... They're just, like, the peaks are too high and the valleys are too low.
That's fair.
That's kind of like, get more boring. Like, you can still have great play calls, but you know what? 3rd and 7, have the right plays. Don't run an end around on 2nd and 2 just because you gained 8 yards on first down. And don't throw go routes on 3rd and 3. That's what he does. Like,
please.
It's consistent as gravity.
Yeah, the long passes on... Oh, God, why would you bring that up? That gives me PTSD.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, especially because McVay is like, 3rd and 1, there's an opportunity for a play-action deep bomb. And it's like he misses it. You know he's going to punt. And I'm like, oh, come on. Like, it's pain. I hate that. But, I mean, kind of like what you're saying, though. You know, you go through that moment where AJ Green doesn't turn around, and then all of a sudden you have the Rams on Tuesday Night Football, which was bizarre. You know, you have those games where you lose those games, and you're like, all of a sudden you're like, we were just undefeated. What gives? You know, it's kind of like, I mean, the Rams went through that. You know, the 3-game losing streak. You know, Tennessee, San Francisco, and Green Bay. And, you know, it's funny because I noticed something in the Texans game. I noticed how they took their starters out in the 3rd quarter, and they finished that game so lethargic. They let Davis Mills just throw 3 touchdowns on them in the 4th quarter, and I said, I hated this. I don't care what anyone says. I said that was the wrong way to finish that game. Everyone's like, but they won by 20-something. Like, why would you say that? Why would I say that? I'll tell you why. Because they dominated the game, and they should have finished strong. The fact they didn't finish strong took out all the momentum. When it takes out all the momentum, you go into Sunday Night Football against, you know, Tennessee, and you don't look as hot. You know, and that's what happened. And so I do think it matters how you finish games and how you respond. And, you know, the Cardinals, when Kyler started getting banged up and stuff, like, you could see that affected the entire team as a whole. I mean, I think he played Green Bay hurt, or he got hurt.
It was the last play of the game where he got hurt.
Yeah. And I mean, after that, it was like, you know, the Rams-Cardinals game, it was like a different Kyler Murray. He wasn't able to run the way he was week 4. You know, right. So I mean that, you know, that's kind of
well,
the deal.
But that means that the game plan that they had was accounted for, and there wasn't much else. Like it's a one option. Like Cliff Kingsbury, yes, and he got injured, and then, you know, Colt McCoy came in, and he had a high ankle sprain. I mean, that sucks. I mean, how often, like a high ankle sprain for a basketball player, that could be 6 weeks. You know, when Kyler missed 2 or 3 weeks, Colt McCoy, he probably could have played if the Cardinals were like 2-4. He probably would have played the last game, but Colt McCoy came in, beat San Francisco, lost to Carolina by 250 points at home, and then beat Seattle. Like, Kyler Murray, you know, and I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm not, because I've never been an NFL player, and I don't know what it's like to get hit by Aaron Donald, okay? But it's like, he's never been hit in his life. You know, he's always been the fastest, pound for pound, the Floyd Mayweather, pound for pound, the best athlete on the field since he was 11 years old. You know? And, like, getting hit is new in the NFL for people that have gotten hit before. And then now it's like, I feel like and I equate him to Steph Curry a lot in this regard. Steph Curry was injury prone for the first couple years of his NBA career. It was ankles, it was legs, it was knees, it was calves, it was whatever. And then for 10 years he never got hurt. He learned. He worked out the right muscles. He did all these things. Just like as a leader for Kyler Murray, he was always lead by example. Now he's learning how to be an NFL leader. And it's not just open the can and then you have a leader. It takes time. And I feel like the same with his body is he's going to learn which workouts. I have Stephen Baca, his trainer, one of his best friends. I have his trainer. I had him on twice, the podcast. He works out so hard in the offseason, and they're tweaking, and they're learning how to adapt for the little injuries that he's had to make his body, as foolproof as possible, as bulletproof as possible. It's got like Darren Sproles played in the NFL forever. He tore his ACL in New Orleans, but he was 5'5", 170, and he just bounced off the turf. Like his center of gravity was so low that he would just bounce off. He had the ACL, and then when he got older, he had injuries, but he got beat up. He was a fantasy football darling 16 weeks a year forever. And it just takes some time, and I feel like his body will adapt, and he's going to learn, and he's going to be able to take hits. He's going to be able to take hits. He's going to be able to learn to fall better. It's an art form to not get injured. I mean, look at what Tom Brady's done. I know they're not the same. Tom Brady's 6'5", but still, it's like, dude, yeah, I know, Jesus. I mean, we're still, like, that still illuminates around Tom Brady hasn't got injured. Well, he did, but we're not going to count that because there's a rule now because of that. But yeah, I mean, I think, his stature, he's not a normal-sized quarterback, but that doesn't mean he can't absolutely do what other quarterbacks do.
Oh, you're right. And, I guess kind of, to wrap this thing up, I'm curious where you are, because I've mentioned, kind of alluded to the idea, I see him as an 8 to 10 win team. We can go through the schedule if you want, but if you'd rather just throw a thing out there, if you have one. If you don't, no worries. But do you have a win-loss projection for that?
Here's the thing. So, I did the way too early because it's fun and it's content for a podcast. I did the way too early. I think it was right after they tried. I think it was right after the draft. I had them at 11-6, and I was like, that doesn't. I didn't do it before. Like I didn't I researched, but it's like, you know what? I'm not gonna look. It's like filling out the bracket for the first time, the NCAA tournament. It's like, I'm not going to have any preconceived ideas except for when they play, where it happens, and when during the season it happens. So I have them starting 1-2 in Kansas City, Vegas on the road, and then the Rams at home. I can't remember. I think they have them beating Vegas or even Kansas City maybe because it's week 1, and anything could happen in week 1. I have them winning like 7 games before their bye, which is week 13. I'm going 7-6, and I have them winning down the stretch. But now that Steve Keim has done legitimately nothing of impact, they traded for Cody Ford, so that's going to provide some depth as we talked about earlier. They've got the offensive firepower. We'll see. The defense is a bunch of young bucks on their own, no safety net. Go get them, kids. Go get them, guys. There's no veteran presence from the linebacking core except for Marcus Golden. The cornerback room has nobody. And you're looking at Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons in the middle of the field and the heartbeat of the defense. So I still think that they're going to win 10 games because this offense is going to be so good. And I truly believe, this isn't a homer take. This isn't hope. DeAndre Hopkins is still, when healthy, a top 5 receiver in the league. I don't care what Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson do. DeAndre Hopkins has never relied on his speed to do anything because he doesn't have any. So him being able to play at 30/31 to 32, he's going to be a pain in the ass for a lot of secondaries for many years to come. So he's going to come back. He's going to be fine. Hollywood Brown will have this release when DeAndre Hopkins comes back. They've got James Conner. They've got Kyler Murray. They've got a good offensive line. I think they're going to put up a top 5 points per game total this year. And you know what? They had some balls bounced, not so great, kind of away from them towards the second half of the season. They got all the bounces in the first half. I see it more leveling out this year, so where they're going to have a win-loss pattern like a traditional season and not so front-loaded, which I think is going to help them. I think that they're going to grow this year. And I think 10 or 11, it's not out of the realm. Like, what's the difference between an 8 or 7 win season and an 11 win season? Field goals, defensive stops. Like, the Cardinals have a murderer's row schedule this year compared to last year because the AFC West is a joke. It's a joke. Like, it shouldn't even be allowed that all 4 of those quarterbacks are in the same division. But the Cardinals don't have to play Russell Wilson twice a year. They only have to play him once because they play Denver this year. I think they'll win 10 or 11 games. If they win 8, would I be surprised? I guess not. If they win 13, would I be surprised? Yes. So I'm saying some kind of somewhere in the middle, 10 or 11 wins. I'll stick with my 11-6 because, at this point, it's like ride or die. Offense is going to have to carry the load.
Yeah, I look at, the way they open it up, the Chiefs game, I think that's a loss. The Raiders game, I think, is kind of a coin flip. I think the Raiders are probably the most underrated team in that division because everyone just keeps they keep putting them in 4. I think they're underrated. I could see that going either way. I'll give them the win, so that would be 1-1. I think that they would probably lose to the Rams, so that'd be 1-2. They'd beat the Panthers 2-2. I think they could beat Philly, although I think Philly's better, so I'd probably go with I'll go in 2-3 there. I think they beat Seattle, so that'd be 3-3. The Saints, I think, are going to be tough. As the season goes on, I think they're a better defense as long as Jameis is healthy. So I'll have them at 3-4. Vikings 3-5. I think the Vikings are nasty. I think they could win that division. Yeah. So 3-5. They beat Seattle again, 4-5. We'll give them the Rams 5-5. They might, they'll probably split one of those. 49ers, they do well against the 49ers for whatever reason. The Rams don't, but so that would be 6-5.
And that's in Mexico City. That game's in Mexico City.
So 6-5. The Chargers 6-6. The Patriots 7-6. The Broncos 7-7. The Bucks will go 7-8. The Falcons 8-8. And then wrapping up with the 49ers, we'll give them 9-8. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and that's fair. It's fair.
But I could totally see them. I could see them losing both the games to the Rams. I could see them beating the Chargers. I could see them beating the Saints. Different aspects of the schedule. Like you said, it comes down to field goals and turnovers and things like that. So I think 9-8 is enough to get Cliff Kingsbury fired, if I'm being honest. I don't know if the Cardinals would do that, but under the circumstances of an average NFL organization with the talent that they have, and if there's not a bevy of injuries, 9-8 is fireable, I think.
So I put this out on Twitter yesterday, okay? And this former head coach happened to be covering the Cardinals game against the Ravens, and he is no longer, going to the Miami Dolphins with Tom Brady. I tweeted out, man, Sean Payton looks at this roster like, oh my God, what I would do with this roster. So this isn't like the Bill Cowher thing where he was looked at as the guy for like a decade after he went to TV because he won one Super Bowl and it's like, well, he's the leader that you want. I don't think that coaching style is so much, unless you're Bill Belichick, what people are expecting now. I feel like Sean Payton, first of all, Cliff Kingsbury's contract extension doesn't come into play until after this season. So that means that Michael Bidwell would have all of the eggs on a chicken farm's face, on his face, if they were to fire him before his contract extension even came into play. So unless everybody stays healthy and they win 6 games this year, he's coming back. This is the hashtag definition of insanity that lives in State Farm Stadium and the state of Arizona and the greater Phoenix area, okay? So, you're wrong. It's rational, and I would jump on your side of the aisle, but I don't think you could be, while being as rational as you are, more wrong than what that sentence ended with. And that's where we are. So it's difficult for me to accept that, try to talk about what can be improved without going back to the root of potentially all of the reason why we're here. And that's why I don't know, man. Like, and again, going back to you with Jeff Fisher and me with Cliff Kingsbury, I hope this S changes. Like, I don't want it to be bad. I want them to. It's great for business if they win. It's fun to watch good things happening between the lines. It's good to watch those things. It's not good to know exactly what was going to happen on the first drive of week 1. False start, timeout, 3rd and 8, kick a field goal. Week 1. And then we saw what happened. I'm like, I have big name national media members messaging me on Twitter after going back and forth all year saying, bye, Cliff. It's like, I saw it coming. And I don't know if you want moral victories, if you want something that the Cardinals haven't had since Bruce Arians, where it's like, this is something to root for. This is fun. Yeah, it's fun, and earn your damn paycheck when you need to earn your damn paycheck. And that's something that we haven't seen, not just from Cliff, from the players, from Kyler Murray, etc. This is going to be the year where that Band-Aid is ripped off, baby. And I'm super excited. I'm super excited to see what happens because we have no flipping idea what's going to happen at all.
We don't. But hey, Alex, this has been a blast. I feel like I know a lot more about the Cardinals thanks to your expertise. And that was what we were trying to get at. Of course, obviously, the audience, we want them to learn more. But I also wanted to learn more, too, because I'm trying to learn every day. But appreciate having you. Where can we find all your stuff? Where can I send everybody to Full Send, even if they're not Cardinals fans, just to check out a good old friend of the show now, Alex Clancy?
You can follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. I do the podcast every day, Locked On Arizona Cardinals, YouTube, posting it every day, do it live, do halftime shows. So, yeah, it's all Cardinals. It's not going to be kiss your keister all the time. I don't know. I don't want to have a filter when it comes to it. Like, I know that fans want positive things, and I talk about it as much as humanly possible. I'm not going to make up storylines just to make something positive happen. And I feel like people are smarter than that, and that I want to play to their acumen and not necessarily what wants to be heard, because positive things are more fun to hear than negative things.
Hey, I hear you. I've gotten hate for doing that because, I think a big point of my YouTube channel is about being unapologetically Jake, right? Like, I'm not going to say anything that is regurgitated nonsense from ESPN or NFL Network or whatever. Like, you're watching my channel clearly to get something new. So I'm not going to just regurgitate stuff. And I am going to say whatever is on my mind because, it's my platform. So I'm with you there. If I want to critique Cam Akers, his pass protecting, I'm going to do that. If I want to say that, I don't think that, the play calling's been up to snuff, I'm going to say that, So I think that's important, and I definitely admire it. I'm a big fan of people that aren't afraid to get their hands dirty, because obviously we know if we kiss the ass of every team, man, you'll end up with 20,000 followers who want to be true to what you're doing, and so that's the big thing there. But hey, appreciate you. Appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, I know you're busy, man, so really appreciate that. Go follow him. I'm gonna put the link in the description below, where you can find all of his content there. But Alex, thanks again for being our expert. Hope you guys enjoy. This is the first episode of this new series where we learn about all 32 teams, and that's gonna do it. So I'm Jake Ellenbogen. He's Alex Clancy, and we're out. Later, folks.